China calls for all parties to follow the principles of the UN Charter. We need constructive dialogue and cooperation to solve differences in human rights. All parties should put people at the center. People's wish for a better life is the goal of all our agenda. We need to make people feel fulfilled, happier and safer.
Thank you. I give the floor to the United Nations Watch.
Mr. President, my name is Denise Ho, singer and democracy activist from Hong Kong. The Vienna Declaration guarantees democracy and human rights. Yet in Hong Kong today, these are under serious attack. Last month, 2 million people walked in peaceful protests, fighting an extradition bill that would remove the firewall, protecting Hong Kong from interference of the Chinese government. Police shot rubber bullets and 150 tear gas bombs against unarmed protesters.
Sorry, there is a point of order. I give the floor to China.
I'm asking for the floor to raise a point of order. The Hong Kong Special Administrative Region is a part of the People's Republic of China. Just now, this so-called delegate of the NGO, in her speech, mentioned Hong Kong side by side with China. This is an affront to the principle of One China and the principle of the UN Charter. I'd like to ask you, Mr. President, to urge her to use standardized UN formulation when referring to places.
I remind speakers to adhere to the well-established principles of the United Nations, including the principles of the United Nations Charter. And I give the floor back to the speaker.
Dozens were arrested. 4 people committed suicide as an ultimate cry of despair. This anger of Hong Kong has followed years of deceitful promises. Since the handover, we saw our autonomy slowly eroded. Disqualification of 6 lawmakers, kidnappings of booksellers and activists jailed are proof of China's tightening grip. Real universal suffrage is still non-existent. With the chief executive officer appointed and controlled by Beijing, China is preventing our democracy at all costs. Mr. President, the Sino-British Joint Declaration is a binding treaty registered with the UN. Yet after only 22 years, China is denying its obligations. The one country, two systems is nearing its death. Protests are still ongoing.
There is a point of order. I give the floor to China.
I'd like to again raise a point of order. Just now the Speaker has made unfounded allegations to the system of one country, two systems. We categorically reject this. We'd like to ask you to remind her not to use abusive language in her speech.
I've asked the Speaker to take note of the points made by China while I give back to her, the floor to her.
Will the United Nations convene an urgent session to protect the people of Hong Kong? Given its abuses, will the UN remove China from this Human Rights Council? Thank you.
Thank you. I give the floor to China.
Certain NGO abused its consultative status, violated the relevant stipulations of the Human Rights Council regarding the NGO participation, and engaged in a slandering and accusation on China's sovereignty and internal affairs. China expresses its strong condemnation and opposition. Since the return of Hong Kong, the policy of one country, two systems has been faithfully implemented. The rights and freedoms of Hong Kong residents have been fully guaranteed. The facts are there for all to see. With regard to the legislative amendment of Hong Kong, the process would help to fulfill the existing legal loopholes and to fight crime and to uphold justice and rule of law is necessary and legitimate. The Hong Kong government will engage fully with Hong Kong residents so that people can understand that this process is in the interest of Hong Kong. However, on 1st of July, some extreme and radical individuals used the pretext of protesting against the amendment, used extreme violence to attack the legislative building. Using the so-called freedom of speech or assembly to justify violence is never tenable.
I don't understand why China can still have a seat in here where they do not respect human rights, not only in Hong Kong but also in Tibet and Xinjiang. With the Uyghurs. So I think this is a very serious issue and a global issue that not only touches Hong Kong people, but really the global world, where you see governments, they are silencing themselves because of being afraid of political reprisal, economic reprisal.